Good morning, everyone. It's Saturday, which means it's time for yet another Salty Saturday morning. I am your host, Mr. Kadish. Get it right. And we are going to be talking about all types of stuff today, including how the Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League game cost Warner Brothers a ton of money. We're also going to be talking about how Pablo Hidalgo likes to lie about how much George Lucas likes Star Wars. And the big news of the stream is going to be about these new Lord of the Rings movies that Warner Brothers just announced. We're going to talk about all that and more. But first, I want to introduce my fantastic panel of nerds, starting with Matt Vader, 74. How you doing, buddy?
Hi. I'm getting double feedback somewhere, and it's really messing me up. So,
do you have the stream open in another stream?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it. I'll be right back. Good start, Matt. Good start. It's the way to go, man. All right.
We're professionals, y'all.
If there's ever a technical issue, we guarantee Matt Vader's
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Technology is his Achilles heel.
Or Brian with the smoke machine.
All right.
Yeah, the original smoke show, Brian.
Right,
Speaking of which, Brian, who is not here today, basically he texted me this morning and he said that apparently there's a thing called Mexican Mother's Day, which is the day before regular Mother's Day.
Of course they do it early.
Yes, and his wife basically required him to take her out to brunch for Mexican Mother's Day, and so he got hijacked by his wife, and he won't be here today, unfortunately, but hopefully he'll be back next week. But until then, we have the one and only Tom Connors Jr. from Midnight's Edge. How you doing, Tom?
I'm here. What do you want?
Just your love and support.
Dinner.
I want to watch you
have my love and
cereal.
support.
I really want to see you eat cereal.
Not cereal today. It's cheese curds.
Oh,
cheese curds.
Breakfast of champions.
I've been up for more than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Speaking of the breakfast of champions, we have the king of the pineapple pizza himself, Odin of Easter. How are your shelves doing there, Odin?
The shelves, they're still fragile. Okay. I'll finally, this summer, it's crazy that, because as a teacher, next week is our last days of classes and start of exams. It's one of those weird things because of where the end of the year falls. We have 3 days of school and then 2 days of exams. So they don't get a nice weekend to prepare for exams, essentially, at least the first set. But that means summer is almost here for me. And that makes me happy because it means I can see more movies, read the books I've been wanting to read, and more notably for anyone who's a parent and also works, hey, time to actually do all the stuff around the house that I've been wanting to do, like put my movies back in order because they've been out of order now for the past however many months since the shelves fell. So glad to be here.
Mr. Physical Media himself.
Yep.
And welcoming her to her first time on Salty Saturdays, we have the lovely and talented Gothix TV. How you doing, Gothix?
Hello. I am doing fantastic. I can't wait to add to the salt. Is that what the kids say around these parts?
Something like
that.
You're
just
you're
me.
hip to our jive. Yeah. All good. Guys, if you haven't seen it already, Gothix has a awesome documentary out over at lore.tv. It's where it's exclusively streaming right now, I believe. Gothix, you want to give us a quick breakdown of what the documentary is about?
Yeah, so the documentary is about me and my journey being canceled as a Twitch streamer because I said some opinions on the internet that the internet didn't like. And so it takes you through the journey of me getting canceled, losing sponsorships, losing myself in the process, talks about mental health and just the whole shebang of what you would expect for being a opinionated person online.
I think if you haven't been attempted to be canceled, you're not part of the cool crowd. You're like doing something wrong if nobody's ever tried to cancel. I know Tom Connors gets canceled like multiple times a day.
I'm being canceled right now.
Exactly.
It's good
right now. And
I need somebody in the chat to cancel me then because I'm not cool.
Yeah.
Well, you're white, so you automatically are canceled.
Yeah,
it's just a matter of
time.
All right.
Yeah. And speaking of the chat, we also have a link to the documentary as our pinned comment in the chat. So if you guys want to hop on over there and check that out, feel free to do so. Also, guys, we want to let you know that when this live stream is over, be sure to hang around because we're going to be redirecting you to Mephisto's movie reviews. And if you want to follow them on YouTube, they're at Mephisto. That's their YouTube channel. So they're going to be going live right after we're done. So if you guys are looking for something else movie related to watch, be sure to hang out and we'll just automatically redirect you. You don't even have to do anything. And good people over there. I got to hang out with Mephisto when he was here in Las Vegas with his lovely family. And we had a really good time. The goal for today is 10 new members and 20 super chats. If we can hit 20
Oh.
super chats, doesn't matter if it's a super sticker or a dollar, like whatever it is you guys want to give. We just want to get 20 of those suckers on there as well.
Matt's desperate. It doesn't matter.
Yes, I'm very desperate for money. I love money.
I like money.
Speaking of which, we have a super thanks from Scotty Dub that we want to read, and this is from my Fall Guy movie review, which I know 1,000 of you have at least seen. And he says, "Well done, Mr. Kadish. It's not often we get to see you perform. Also, Zack Snyder's speaking voice sounds exactly like Ben Shapiro's impersonation of Chris Matthews," which he's not wrong.
Huh.
It is quite accurate to Ben Shapiro's Chris Matthews.
Chris Matthews, man, I haven't heard that name come up in a long time.
I know, right? Speaking of guys who got canceled, right?
Now, here's the real
yeah.
question.
Oh.
Have you posted that review on Criticless yet?
I have not had.
Then
No.
it does not exist to me, Mr. I'm going to wear a Criticless hat, but still not post my reviews there.
Also, Vader, I need you to be hitting those stars on the super chats.
I think they're coming up on my end, dude.
Yeah. So, I'm just reminding you because for some
Yep.
reason StreamYards isn't auto starring all the super chats. We want to get to everyone's stuff, but
Yep.
first, we want to give a big shout out to all of our major supporters, including Scotty Dub, who is still undefeated at $190 super chat, and William Forbes is still second place with his $120 super chat, but Scotty Dub is our top contributor for this stream, so we want to give big thanks to Scotty Dub and Mexican Iron Man, who is our most consistent supporter. Where he comes on every Saturday. Just gives us some love, which is great. Vader, I'm still not seeing any of these super chats that you're supposedly starring.
I'm not. They're coming up automatically starred for me, dude. I'm sorry. I'm seeing every one of
Really?
them. Yep. That must be on you. end.
Yeah, must be on my end.
As
Leave
long
it
as
to me.
one of
That-
you.
I can
Yeah,
start
leave it
bringing
to
them up
me.
if you want me to.
No. I'm
Okay.
doing producer duties and hosting duties. Do you know how hard this is?
I know. Like I said, I told you I could bring them up. I could take a little bit of that off your plate. It's fine.
It's okay. Also want to give a big shout out to the Queen of Gifted Memberships, Jillian N, WG, Sam Schwager, Major Chai Chai, and Eric Winberg. These guys are so freaking generous that every
Yeah.
stream they're always like gifting memberships. And speaking of memberships, we got a members chat from Mexican Iron Man, who's been a member for 14 months. That's over a year, guys. Won't make it live as I'm training in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania mountains this weekend. Hail panel, and let's take a moment to praise Mr. Cage. He is my biggest fan.
Is he in a militia? I think he's in a militia.
I think he's preparing.
I think
at
he's
least
like,
prepared.
I think he's digging a big hole, lining it with cement and radiation proof stuff. I think he's making a silo. He's making a bunker.
I think so. He's definitely becoming a prepper and a survivalist
Yeah,
and all that
yeah.
stuff. But we love him. Mr. Anderson did a $10 super sticker. I don't think I've ever seen a $10 super sticker before.
That's
but
great.
really
Nice.
appreciate it.
I think
And of course-
go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say Eric Winberg has gifted one Salty Nerd podcast membership. So that's one more towards our goal. Thank you very much, Eric. And then, of course, Mr. WG himself, who we got to hang out with while he was here for the Nerdrotic meetup.
Yep.
Member for 12 months. That's a whole year. Wow. 1 year as a listener and a free super chat to prove it. Yes, we appreciate that, WG. And speaking of WG, he just gifted 10 Salty Nerd podcast memberships. So we're already over our goal.
Fantastic.
Stretch goal 20 memberships. Let's see if we can hit that. So we're at 11 now, but also 16 thanks to Jillian and the Queen of Gifted
Boom.
Salty Nerd podcast
Man,
membership itself.
The memberships are raining down this morning. That's amazing.
I
Thank you,
know
guys.
they're making it rain. Yes. So we get 4 more. We'll hit our stretch goal. But guys,
Yeah.
not to be outdone, our top contributor, Scotty Dub, once again drops a hundo on the podcast.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Scotty Dub. Scotty Dub for $9,999, which is basically $100. I'm just gonna say $100. In honor of Gothix, and especially because my man Mr. Kadish remains the GOAT. With that said, Matt, you got to lay off Odin on the pineapple pizza before he crumbles under the weight of your prose. Still awaiting your cameo on Pop Culture Crisis 2, Baby Reindeer, anyone. I don't want to watch Baby Reindeer. I saw the trailer for it and I was just like, I think I'm going to pass on that. But Pop Culture Crisis has actually, invited me to come out. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the date that they offered me, but eventually it will probably happen. It's all up to Mary Morgan on there. So Bug Mary, she's the one in charge of all like the scheduling on that show.
I got to tell you, for $100, that guy deserves something, though.
Please don't get pineapple on your pizza. It's It's a scientific fact that pineapple goes bad the moment you put it on pizza. And so does the pizza, baby. So please don't do that to me. Please don't do that to me.
Thank you. Thank
Right
you.
on.
That's
So
my song.
do you not like pineapple on pizza? I have to ask.
No,
No.
I don't.
He almost
I don't.
threw up when he
Uh,
tried.
well-
Scientific fact that it goes bad the moment you put it on.
Well, I need
Mm.
this stream now. I don't know if I can be around this
Hey,
toxicity.
I
know, right?
love pineapple on pizza.
As-
That's one
as
of my
do
favorite
I.
toppings.
Love it.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Love
we're a nice balance here. Even
Okay.
though Odin's
You already
wrong,
got
icky all
tomatoes
the time.
pretending to be veggies. Come on.
The big thing is that there was a bet that I lost, and so I had to eat pineapple on pizza on stream for FNT, and let's just say that the people weren't satisfied with it. So
Have you guys ever had? This is like a free promotion, but have you guys ever had Jet Pizza? It's a franchise out of Detroit, I guess, and there's one here in Vegas now. My wife brings it home all the time. It's fantastic. They make 4-corner pizzas. The crust is about 1 inch thick, and it's all crusty and buttery, and it's fantastic.
Sounds a lot like Rocky Rococo's.
It's just the best pizza I've had in
so like
years.
all carbs basically is what I'm
It's
hearing.
all carbs, and it's
Okay.
amazing. Yeah. So anyway, Jet Pizza,
And
check
also-
it out.
And also, for everyone who hasn't clicked off or fast forwarded on the replay, just want to give one last shout out to saltynerdclub.com, which is our Patreon. And we've got movie commentaries going up on there. If you guys don't want to subscribe to our Patreon, they're available for individual purchase. We just released the Pacific Rim one at the start of this month. And on the 15th, that's going to be free for our Superstar tier members over there. But we've also got the 1995 movie Hackers with Angelina Jolie. And the first one was Masters of the Universe with Dolph Lundgren. So if you guys like our takes on movies and you want to check those out, we'd really appreciate it because they are a lot of fun. All right, guys. So enough housekeeping. Let's get to some of the news stories. And the first one we're going to talk about is the Suicide Squad game that has apparently cost Warner Brothers a crap ton of money. So we got this report here from Dark Horizons. And in one of Warner Brothers' recent, was it like financial calls or one of those things, they basically said that the Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League live service game was a huge debacle for them, where it cost them upwards of $200 million in earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Now, guys, basically it cost them the same amount as like a big budget Hollywood movie to basically make this video game and get the backlash for it. Now, before we get into the panel's discussion on this, I just want to kind of set the stage for those of you who might not be familiar with like all the stuff that happened around this game in terms of Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. It was a Rocksteady game who were kind of well known for doing the Batman Arkham Asylum games, if I'm not mistaken. And basically, this was like their first foray into live service, and they spent a lot of money developing it and hyping it up and stuff like that. But the controversy that came out around it was about this consulting company that they had hired to kind of come on and basically tell them what all the hip young gamers are into and what they should and shouldn't do. And it was a company called Sweet Baby Inc. And basically, Sweet Baby Inc.'s job was to come in and tell them to get rid of all the white people, get rid of all the male gays, ug up the women, basically emphasize on diversity and inclusion and all this other intersectional stuff. And, obviously in live service games aren't popular amongst gamers to begin with. And then all this other stuff, especially the way that they treated legacy characters like Batman and Superman and the Flash and all this other stuff, really left a sour taste in the fans' mouths. And then what happened was on Steam, there was a user who created a kind of I want to call it a playlist. I don't know what the
Brutus. Yep.
like a group name or whatever, called Sweet Baby Inc. Detected. And he basically just started, a curated list of all the games that this company, Sweet Baby Inc., was involved with in terms of like their consulting services. And they were all terrible games that lost a lot of money and fans didn't like. And sorry, there's someone at the door. But there was a lot of stuff in there that gamers didn't like. And so essentially they are Sweet Baby Inc. overreacted to this because it was hurting their business, getting exposed for, all this terrible stuff that they were doing. And it kind of blew up, and it became Gamergate 2, where like basically users, or I should say gaming journalists, kind of sided with the Sweet Baby Inc. people, and they tried to get people canceled, and they tried to get this curated list taken down and all this other stuff. So it was a big debacle, and we just so happened to have someone on the panel who was right in the heart of it, and I want to throw it to her. So Gothix, number one, what was your role in the whole Sweet Baby Inc. Kind of like thing? What happened to you, and what's your take on Warner Brothers losing $200 million because of it?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I was even involved. I mean, I wasn't with Sweet Baby Inc. I know of this consulting group. I was a part of another, I guess, consulting company called Black Girl Gamers. But I was a part of like their Twitch team and community before they actually started taking money to consult with the Forspoken game, which also bombed miserably. So as far as like my take on all of this, I mean, I am not surprised. This is sort of what you get when you the only value that you can add to society is telling other people how much they're terrible for being white or being privileged, and then you take money to promote this ideology, and most of the population doesn't care for this ideology. So this really is straight out of a Marxist playbook where you gain control of key positions in media and video game, for this example, and you just pay these companies money to promote nonsense. And it's really just to rile people up, which is exactly what Gamergate is doing. People are pissed off. And it's really just an effort to just make video games ugly and unappealing, and the end result are game studios closing and people losing their jobs, which is, I think, part of the plan. But yeah, I mean, that's my opinion on it. I didn't play the game because something about villains being like villains killing the good guys. I mean, I don't know. It's edgy, I guess, but it just didn't appeal to me.
Yeah, there was also this big thing where Captain Boomerang urinated on the corpse of the Flash, which,
What?
kind of odd.
Mm.
Yeah. Like basically there's scenes in the game where like, you kill iconic members of the DC universe, and it's always a very embarrassing and terrible death that they go through. But Matt Vader 74, you are a gamer.
Yeah.
And you have recently launched Salty Nerd Gaming, and you do live streams of you playing Helldivers and stuff like that. What's your take on this? Do you think that studios might get the hint that gamers don't want this type of content, and instead of throwing $200 million in the tube?
After a $200 million hit, one would think that they would get the message right. I mean, people don't want that stupid DEI crap thrown in their face, and they certainly don't want it in their video games. I mean, I guess maybe a few people do, but those people are such fringe weirdos that, and I don't even think most of them can afford to buy these video games anyway. So who are they really making these games for? So I don't know. I like games that just they put out that we can have fun with. Games like we're playing right now, like Helldivers. There's none of this DEI stuff in there that I can really see. Yes, they have some people on the staff that in the community and stuff that fill all kinds of niches, but we go in there and we play a game, and we're all covered from head to toe with our masks. It doesn't matter what color the skin is or any of that stuff, and we go in there and we kill bugs and we kill robots, and we have a great time. And that's what gaming should be. You know what I'm saying? It's about fun. It's about escapism. I don't want any of our modern day issues thrown in our faces while we're trying to have some escapism, and that's what I play games for. So,
Helldivers is a live service game as well. Can you talk about the difference between how Helldivers handles its live service versus something like Sweet Baby Inc. or Destiny or something like that?
Well, I mean, I don't really know what the definition of live service game is, but it seems like they're just trying to tell us a story. They're trying to keep the stuff we don't like out. There's no extremism stuff from either side of the political spectrum or what have you in the game. There was a little bit of a thing about people wanting trans flags being put in the game on the capes and stuff that we wear, and they said no. We're not going to do that. There was also, at the same time, it's like, well, they're not going to put a MAGA flag in the game either, or something that would represent that. It's just they're telling us a story, they're keeping it straight, and that's what we want. So they're trying to keep the escapism in the game. We don't want the real world stuff inserted in there. It's about going to war with bugs and robots and the Illuminate coming up pretty soon, I have a feeling. And that's it. It's escapism. It's fun. And we don't want that stuff in there. And I think they're doing a pretty decent job of keeping that out of the game for the most part. So
yeah, and the live services on Helldivers, it's like they sell stuff for like 99 cents in their store.
Yeah.
Like if you want to get like new cosmetics or whatever. Whereas with these other games like Star Wars Outlaws and Suicide Squad, like you're paying like upwards of $10 for like a blue outfit or something
there's no side quests with diverse characters that have nothing to do with the game where you can go spray graffiti on a wall or whatever. There's nothing like that going on. So
yeah, like the Spider-Man stuff. So I want to throw this to Odin. Odin, they talked about how Warner Brothers Interactive, the video game section of Warner Brothers, basically when they released the Hogwarts game, the Harry Potter Hogwarts Legacy or whatever it was called, that had not only glowing reviews and a lot of love from like the gaming community, but it also made a ton of money. And then a year later, Suicide Squad comes out and it's completely the opposite. Like nobody liked it and it lost a ton of money. And it's even unclear at this point whether or not Rocksteady is going to continue to support the game going forward because the player base just isn't there. So what's your take on this whole debacle?
Yeah, I don't tend to follow video game news all that much because my focus is much more on the financials of movies. But just looking into it very briefly, like it seems like they haven't admitted exactly how much the video game cost them to make, just that it cost them like $200 million in potential profits. And when you look at the fact that this is like 2021, they made $170 billion or something like that, like some crazy amount in like profits, like the entire video game industry. I mean, we're talking about an easy market to make money in, and for them to make a game that has featured characters that is, you could argue like mainstream as far as like having recognizable IP to its value. Like to be able to then lose money on that project on something that should already have been a guaranteed hit in the sense of making your money back, making some profits because of how much you charge for a game and how much of all those things typically, you typically get from them, right? It just shows you just how bad this game actually performed to the point where it's losing money. Like, again, I don't know exactly how often games tend to lose money, but I feel like it's hard in today's world to make a game that has big characters in it and actually lose money on it. Like, because even the issues that I had with the new Spider-Man game, for instance, because I actually haven't played the game in a long time, because as I was playing through it, I unfortunately got caught in a side quest that ended up being hey, you need to help this guy ask this other guy out. And I was like, I don't want to play that. And so I tried getting out of it, and they were like, sorry, you can't get out of this mission. I'm like, okay, then I'm not playing anymore. Like I'm not playing through that mission. No, thank you. And so I just gave it up. But I also know that game did well, like as far as total units sold, even though there was obviously some criticism. So again, it feels like it's very hard to lose money. So that says a lot, I think, about this game.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tom, so $200 million is nothing to sneeze at, especially for Warner Brothers, who's in a period of austerity right now. What's your take on all this?
Well, my question is did they actually absorb this loss, or was it the game company? Because I don't exactly know how this license works. Because as far as I know, like toys, for instance, the companies will pay for the toys, and then that's how it works. Sometimes there's a per unit deal worked out afterwards, but it's not usually the studio that's out money. That's my question.
According to this article, basically David Zaslav and the CFO Gunnar Windenfels said that the game's failure had a negative effect on Warner Brothers, the company's revenue, to the point of 200 million impact on earnings. So it was
I don't know if they were
Brothers.
expecting to earn that much, or if there was some investment on their side that it lost out. Well, luckily for them, Hogwarts probably made up for that.
Yeah.
But another thing that I pointed out the other day when we were talking about this was this game itself would have come to being, and I even checked it out, during the Ann Sarnoff regime. So this predated Zaslav by years. So in a way, I wonder if it was more of a pointing out that the old way wasn't working, and this is the kind of stuff that got us to where we are now. Because this would have been put together at the same time as, you know, the Harley Quinn movie and all that kind of stuff when they were trying to get rid of Batman, Superman, and replace them. So this whole thing makes sense to me more so now than it did then. And I think in a way, Warner Brothers will try to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. Because yeah, $200 million, like you said, is not anything to sneeze at. Although they'll be able to absorb it pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, just looking it up
after the Hogwarts.
Yeah, looking it up quickly, Hogwarts Legacy reportedly made 1.3 billion in revenue.
So that's pocket change there.
Yeah.
For...
Yeah, but it also doesn't spell a lot of good stuff for Rocksteady, so it might affect their future stuff.
No. So yeah, the ones who will hurt the most are going to be the programmers and the companies that make these games, because that's the thing I've become to learn is that a bad game like this can bankrupt a studio.
Yeah. Because to your point too, like the question about like licensing, was it that Rocksteady, you know, made the game, put the upfront investment in, and then Warner Brothers, I guess maybe like did they pay them the amount it cost to make the game? So Rocksteady's good, but now that this has obviously hurt Warner Brothers, now that relationship's broken. I'm wondering if that might be what's going on.
Yeah, it could be a situation like that. That's what I was curious about, is how the actual licensed work. Because, for instance, like I said, with the Star Wars toys that we always talk about, Disney wasn't really out any money. Hasbro was.
Yeah.
Because they would pay X amount plus per figure that was sold or whatever. But at the end of the day, Disney still got a check wrote to them. And they didn't really lose anything in that exchange. It was Hasbro and whoever else. So then that's why, as the movies went along, they didn't have as much merchandising because the companies weren't going to buy into it. So I'm not sure how these games usually work on the license side of things, but that would make sense what Odin said too, as far as them losing the money. But yeah, that's probably the biggest black eye they've had in the last couple months to a year here. So, I mean, I guess if that's one of the worst things, good for Dave.
Right on. Well, for those of you out there watching this on replay, let us know in the comments what you think about this particular story. Love to hear from you. And also, we are now reading super thanks. So if you want to drop us a super thanks in the comments, we will make sure to get to it next time we go live.
They say in the chat that Warner owns Rocksteady. That's why.
Yeah, it's probably part of Warner's Interactive.
Sense.
So they're probably going to be working on a new Lord of the Rings video game pretty soon, which we will be getting to in a little bit. But first, I want to open this up to like a broader talk about how this led to, this is kind of part and parcel of Gamergate 2.0. And Gothix, I'm super interested in, your experience with Black Girl Gamers, like how you got involved with them and like what happened ultimately. And for those of the people watching that might not, be aware of like all that stuff, can you kind of share your experience with that?
Yeah, so just to reiterate, I was a part of Black Girl Gamers when before they were a consulting company. I think they were laying the groundwork for what they're intending to do now, which is consult with these game developers to inject their nonsense into the story. So I was a part of their Twitch team. I was a part of their community. I collaborated on their channel, but to the extent of consulting with companies, I had nothing to do with it. But they were a part of my my wake-up moment, my political awakening, actually. And so in the documentary, it shows me getting just harassed by a bunch of community members, some of which were a part of Black Girl Gamers. And they ultimately kicked me out because I had a conflicting viewpoint from a lot of the other members. More specifically, I don't believe that people are racist just because you call them racist. And they don't like that. They don't like critical thinking. And it's pretty evident in what they are espousing whenever they consult with these companies. But yeah, that's pretty much the extent of it. I just got kicked out because I had a different opinion, and I didn't believe that, everything just trickled down to our identity as Black people and what Black people should believe. And I don't believe any of that nonsense. So, yeah.
Well, I don't think the vast majority of people believe in it either. But, speaking of DEI and injecting woke nonsense into stuff, let's talk about Star Wars for a little bit. So, guys, apparently, according to Pablo Hidalgo, George Lucas consulted on the Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show and really liked it. And he also liked a bunch of other stuff that apparently he didn't see, but, It's George, so
Oh,
people
yeah,
are like,
it
George
was
approved
great.
of it. So
cool.
this article comes from StarWarsNewsNet.com. And by the way, guys, all the links to all the topics we're covering are in the description of this video. So if you guys want to read these on your own, feel free to. But Pablo Hidalgo on a recent podcast basically said that early on, there was a conversation we had with George about what his thoughts were and whether or not he bought the whole concept of taking Obi-Wan and Vader again. And he was 100% supportive. And I've heard tell that it's one of his favorite things to come out of Star Wars because he recognizes so much of what he did in the prequels, basically brought forward and celebrated in a way that I'm sure surprised him. And then it goes on to kind of talk about how, maybe he this is like a rare occurrence because in Bob Iger's book, he wasn't too pleased with the Force Awakens, and he didn't even go to the premiere of The Rise of Skywalker. But George Lucas has basically proven time and time again that he doesn't give a crap about Star Wars. Like it's not something that's on his radar anymore. And you can tell because, Star Wars continues to go off a cliff, and we are on the cusp of a new Star Wars show called The Acolyte, which is basically like DEI personified on there. So I want to throw this to Matt Vader. Matt Vader, 74.
Typing, man. I'm typing.
You no longer love Star Wars.
No, I hate Star Wars.
You've been thinking about trying to rebrand your name, and we've talked about it. What's your take on George Lucas and his relationship with Star Wars nowadays?
I think George Lucas is pretty much checked out of Star Wars. He's going to go in there and he's going to give him some lip service, but I think he's retired, man. I think he just they're going to go, "Hey George, what did you think of the new Obi-Wan Kenobi show?" And he's not going to sit there and talk a bunch of crap. He's going to go, "Oh yeah, it was okay. I thought it was fine." Everything I read about this stuff is it sounds like lip service. It's like, what do you say about something you haven't watched or you really don't care about that you created but have no control over anymore. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it was okay. It was fine. It was, he's not going to sit there and trash it. You know what I'm saying? But I don't get any like huge ringing endorsements out of anything I hear that comes out of George Lucas's mouth about Star Wars anymore.
Well, Vader, on our Tuesday live stream, you famously said, "Fuck George Lucas."
Yeah, I did. Because yeah, that's exactly what I feel. I've felt that way about George Lucas, honestly, probably since episode 1 came out. I am admittedly one of those guys that kind of went to war with Star Wars when episode 1 came out with all the midi-chlorian nonsense and the terrible casting and the awful acting and the Jar Jar Binkses and I mean, there's been 2 good Star Wars movies, guys, 2 out of 9, and 6 of those George Lucas was involved in, and that's just how I feel. I feel like George Lucas is a great concept guy, but he's not a great writer. He needs a lot of help, and when they leave him to his own devices, things go crazy. So come at me, I guess, if you don't like what I have to say. But yeah, George Lucas, he sold it. None of this would have happened if George hadn't sold his thing. We wouldn't have got any more movies and TV shows, but at least then the expanded universe would still be alive and well, and there might be some other cool stuff out there by now. Who knows what would have happened? But nope, he sold it to Disney. Disney ruined it, and fuck George Lucas. Okay, so there you go. Put it on a t-shirt.
All right. Gothix. So I'm friends with a pretty well-known gaming guy here in Las Vegas, and his focus used to be on Star Wars games. And he did this event that EA put on where him and like 2 other big Star Wars gaming influencers were going to get up on stage and like talk about Star Wars games and stuff like that. And right before he was set to go on stage, they came to him and basically said that their appearances were all canceled. And he was like, "Dude, like, I took time out of my day. I came down here to LA, like we were supposed to be on stage. What happened?" And he was basically told that Kathleen Kennedy didn't want 3 white guys on stage taking up the oxygen for Star Wars. And so they wanted they wanted women to be up there, and of course they didn't have any women who were into Star Wars games, and so they just basically canceled the appearance. But this is kind of indicative of Kathleen Kennedy's tenure as the head of Lucasfilm, where basically like she's trying to pivot to a more female-centric, more diverse audience than what the hardcore Star Wars fan base is. And so I wanted to get your take on this. You know, do you think that there's anything George could do or anything that the fans could do to try to salvage Star Wars away from like this road to destruction that it's going down?
Yeah, so I'm first of all, I need to expose myself and say that I've never seen any Star Wars, so I'm very uncultured in this particular topic. But it sounds like I only have to watch 2 movies because
Yeah, just two.
You can watch 3.
Just 2.
that's not a lot. But my recommendation is to stop supporting this stuff. Stop supporting it. Vote with your dollars. The second anyone says that they want to, they want to reimagine something with the modern audience that is appealing or empowering to women or women of color, trans, handicapped, whatever, all the check boxes, I know it's going to be trash because this is like saying I'm a girl gamer. What does that even mean? Are you a gamer? Are you good at the game? That's all I care about. So if you have a good story, then that's all that should matter. I don't care what check boxes you want to tick off because then that means that you're trying to overcompensate with being a diversity thing instead of focusing your resources on creating a good game or a good story. So don't support it.
Oh, simple yet effective. Tom, so a lot of people, a lot of Star Wars apologists, especially like Pablo Hidalgo and the people who like the sequels, basically they use George Lucas as a shield. And they always say like, oh, if George approved it, therefore it's good. In this article, which I recommend people check out, there's numerous anecdotes about George Lucas, telling Rian Johnson that The Last Jedi was a well-made movie. Notice he didn't say it was good. He said it was well-made, which means that it was in focus. But he in Bob Iger's biography, he talks about how Kathleen Kennedy had a private screening of The Force Awakens for George, and he didn't like it because he said it was repetitive and they didn't do anything new and there wasn't anything technically innovative about it. And then he didn't even show up to the premiere of The Rise of Skywalker. He did like Tony Gilroy's Rogue One, but apparently like he hasn't watched the TV show. And he, when asked about The Mandalorian, he was just like, yeah, I liked it. There's this habit of people especially on Twitter, where they're just like, oh, if George is cool with it, then it must be good for Star Wars. So I want to get your take on this. Do you think George Lucas still has a place for Star Wars? And what about all the people who kind of use him to kind of shield all the bad decision making?
Well, this is one of those few times you threw me a question that was probably meant for me because I've probably taken the most flack of just about anybody in our sphere for being a realist about George from day one. And I was one of those people when he sided with Bob with this whole thing. I'm like, are you surprised? He's a goddamn hippie who loves Bob Iger.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, at the end of the day, George Lucas, I think you just said it best yourself. What was wrong with Force Awakens in his eyes? It didn't do anything new. It didn't innovate, and it was just retreading the first film. Okay, but that tells you everything you need to know about George because that says everything about the prequels. Sure, it's a lot of new stuff. It's so new that it doesn't even sync up with his original films, right? Like, it's like he never even watched his own movies before writing the prequels. And as I've said before, we are bigger. Hell, even Gothix is probably a bigger Star Wars fan than George Lucas is. And she's never seen it.
You're probably right.
Because George don't give a shit. To him, we're a bunch of fucking nerds who won't leave him alone. We have done nothing but bombard him for years for another Star Wars movie, and then when he gives us one, all we did was shit on it. Fair enough, right? Okay, so he sold it off. And a lot of us were like, good. Keep his fucking paws off it because he's the problem with the last 3. And then we see what Disney did with it, and it's like, oh, because you can't do anything new. And I hate to remind people that, you want to know probably one of the reasons why he gravitated towards The Last Jedi more than any of the other films? That was the one movie that was close to what he wanted to do. So to remind people, just go look, it's all out there. His version of what the Star Wars sequels would have been was pretty close to what Last Jedi was. The only big difference was you actually did get to see Luke train Rey. right? That's the only big difference. Otherwise, a lot of his concepts and stuff looks a lot like The Last Jedi.
I hope he didn't train her too hard, otherwise he would have died. So
Well, he
you know,
flicked too hard at the end. I mean, that's all there is to it.
man.
And I mean, really, I think a lot of people wouldn't have had a bigger problem with The Last Jedi it just had a few changes in it. And a lot of those changes should have been made just so they could have made a third film, considering we lost Carrie Fisher. And Mark Hamill should have been left alive. And I know most people would have been just happy if he had shown up himself, right? Like if that movie would have just ended with him going, all right, now I got to go save, the rebellion, and lifts that X-Wing out of the water one more time like he did in Empire Strikes Back, gets his happy ass in the bastard and flies across the galaxy and saves people in person, then people probably wouldn't have had so much of a problem. But the fact that he literally phones it in is the problem. And that's kind of the whole thing. And George Lucas did the same thing with the prequels. I know we have these glossy-eyed memories of certain things, especially if you were younger when they came out, but they fucking suck. They're horrible films. They don't sync up with the original movies at all. I mean, if you want to know the truth, Red Letter Media nailed everything that's wrong with those movies.
They absolutely did.
And they're not wrong, as much as some people like to hate on him. And people have this God complex when it comes to George Lucas. He is not perfect.
Nope.
In fact, he really named one thing that he did besides Star Wars that was all that successful. Indiana Jones, and he had Steven Spielberg to help. Can you imagine if he'd have made Indiana Jones by himself? They'd all been like Crystal Skull. That's what they'd been like. And I know that for a fact because Crystal Skull is the movie where Steven didn't want to make it, and he finally just gave in to George and said, fine, we'll make your fucking alien picture. Because he didn't know what else to do at that point, and the studio was pressuring the hell out of him, and he wanted a paycheck.
Tom's breaking every rule on the Salty Nerd podcast right now.
I don't care right now.
We don't speak of that movie.
George Lucas, I love him to death for he created Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, but people need to start to see that Return of the Jedi was where the problems started to set in. It's not even a movie. 3 things happen in the entire movie. That's it.
Yep.
And I got into an argument with somebody because I said, you can shit on Godfather 3 all day long, but it's still a better conclusion to the trilogy than Return of the Jedi. Because at least something happens that isn't the same shit as before. Because literally they go get Han, and then they meander for an hour, then they blow up the Death Star, and we find out that Vader came back to the good side. That's the 3 things that actually happened in the movie besides the last minute addition that Leia's his sister for no good fucking reason. And anybody who wants to sit there and go, but George had it all planned out. No, he did not. He did not have any of that shit planned out. None of it. That's why at the last minute he decided, I'm going to make her the sister. And the story's out there. You can find it. The moment he decided to do that is when he had Luke cornered in the throne room and couldn't get him to fight Vader. He could not think of a good enough reason to get him to fight Vader.
Wasn't that
from Star Wars to Jedi, I believe.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like an old
the
Star
documentary that he won't allow you to see, mind you, because there's a lot of stuff that he says in that documentary that makes him look bad now. That's why. Like, special effects are just a tool. Without a story, they're nothing. Well, yeah, that explains the prequels, George. And look, episode 3 was fine, and I'm sure I'm pissing a lot of people off in the chat. But I mean,
don't think so.
The prequels were a waste of fucking time. And I loved the hype surrounding them. I loved the memes, the community around them, the memes, all that kind of stuff. And Revenge of the Sith was kind of a nice little just whatever to kind of, but at that moment I thought I was saying goodbye to Star Wars. I thought that was it. I was done. I'm good with it. Fine, we'll put this thing to rest. And now I've been dealing with it for nonstop for the last 6 years. And honestly, I'm sick of talking about it.
Yeah, brothers. Yes.
And if we want to sit here and pretend that, George is going to come back and fix anything, no. Just remember the Crystal Skull.
Mm-hmm.
Well, somehow Palpatine returned. And somehow we're returning to Odin to talk about this.
Yes.
Even though I know that Odin, him and Brian have specifically told me no more Star Wars talk on the show, or they're bailing.
You refuse to listen.
Yes, I do, because we're in service of the audience here. But Odin, the damage that has been done to the Star Wars brand since Disney took over, and even going further back since Kathleen Kennedy took over, is immeasurable. Like, they really have alienated, at the very least, half of their fan base. And these are the people who grew up watching Star Wars, loving Star Wars, and they tend to be white dudes. And the kind of like DEI take that Kathleen Kennedy has had with the stuff is really hurting the brand. But just recently, like Bob Iger, he won his proxy battle for the control of the Disney board, and they seem to be not only just going with what they have been doing, but doubling down on it, especially with like the release of The Acolyte that is coming out next month. So I wanted to get your take on this. Like, how do you think continuing to go down the DEI route is going to just eventually kill this franchise?
I mean, it's already dead. I mean, it's honestly, I think that The Acolyte, we've been saying that it's dead for a long time. It's like, how much more dead can you get at this point? The Acolyte at this point, it's honestly getting into some type of necrophilic insanity. I mean, because essentially, like, again, it's dead, right? Like, just leave it alone. It's dead at this point, and everything else they're going to do after this point is just going to be the worst things imaginable that you could possibly ever think of. Like, that's just really the only way to describe what I think The Acolyte's going to end up doing. But I kind of want to get more so to kind of jumping off with Tom, because I agree with almost everything he says, with the exception being I like Return of the Jedi. I find it fun.
I like it. I can watch it.
And again, I think your criticisms are completely legit with it. But I mean, yeah, I love it. And my son, it's probably one of his. He loves all three, but he especially likes that one because it is something much more made for kids. But the Ewoks
Right.
very clearly kid friendly, and I mean, all those other things. But I think that when it comes to the prequels, right, that's one thing I absolutely agree on. Like, the prequels are just not good films. And when it comes to especially the defense of even Episode 3, when it comes to the defense of Revenge of the Sith, I honestly think that most people probably feel that way because, let's be honest, the score, especially in that episode, but in all the prequels even, the score is phenomenal. I mean, like the score especially,
no doubt about that.
The score especially at the end of Revenge of the Sith is some of John Williams' just best, like, most epic work, right? Like, just recently there was a clip going around of him going with the choir, right, for the score, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this guy
Fates is amazing.
Duel of the Fates, yeah, so good. So I think that's like, again, where maybe if you don't have John Williams come back and do that score in that way, because music has a very powerful way of attaching you to a film, and I've actually seen this most notably with my son, because some of the films that he's watched and he's been most connected with have amazing scores. Like, that's the one thing they almost all have in common with each other, is that the scores have been pretty good. And so I think that has to be said. And also, the one thing, I don't know if it was mentioned or not, but it's anytime someone says anything about, don't worry, George Lucas is going to save it, we can look to the prequels, but I think the even clearer example of how little he cares / understands even about his own world is the special editions of Star Wars. I mean, talk about some of the worst decisions that he has ever made. That, I mean, again, because since I do like Return of the Jedi, I actually think that was probably the earlier sign, right, of him, kind of just showing a lack of understanding, right? The fact that now there is a community that had to exist, right, that fans had to come together and say, hey, we need to make our own despecialized versions of this because these are far superior, right? And just how much love and support that has actually gotten. And I think that also shows you, right, clearly he is not this guru. He is not this amazing figure that's just going to save everything, because he essentially tried to destroy even his own good stuff, right? The best things he ever did, the first Star Wars movies, he went back after and then basically tried to make it worse in certain ways, right? So, yeah, I don't trust George Lucas at this point, and I think he's done terrible. Give me a Diet Coke. That's one of the best things SNL has done the last several years, is all the stuff that they have whenever they have the guy playing George Lucas. It's like, you will give me a Diet Coke. You will give me a Diet Coke. And he just fades away in the background. Bobby Moynihan plays a great George Lucas.
There you go.
But yeah, overall, yeah, it's dead, and I think Acolyte's just going to make it worse. And I think that we need to be a little bit more honest about not just the prequels, but also before that. I think the special edition stuff is just unforgivable.
I have a homework assignment for somebody who makes memes. Remember a few weeks ago with this deal with this lady who took her dead uncle to the bank to try to get a loan? Do you guys remember seeing that? I need somebody to take that video or take a photo and put Mickey Mouse's head on her body and George Lucas's head on the corpse. I think that would be a
dark,
funny meme.
but funny.
It's pretty funny. Yeah. So
actually, just do KK. You don't have to do
or Kathleen Kennedy. Yeah. Either one. So Yeah,
Yes,
take
Legion of
George, put me
Memers.
in
Get on that. All right, guys, we got some super chats to get to real quick. So first of all is from Death Angel Shadow for $5. WOTC and WizKids just stepped in it again, gender
Wizards of the
swapping
Coast.
the Wizards of
Sorry.
the Coast. Okay, and WizKids just stepped in it again, gender swapping the warrior on the iconic red box cover, claiming that it was always a woman, despite the artist.
I have not seen that yet. I'm gonna have to go check that out. That sounds crazy. But thank you for the $5. It's awesome.
Yeah, Wizards of the Coast is just going batshit with the DEI
Yeah.
stuff, man. Like they
They've
don't
been that way
care.
for a very long time.
Yeah, but they don't care how many of their fans they seem to be alienating with it. It's kind of weird.
It's true.
It's like business decisions, right?
Yep.
Magna Defender 98 for $10. There's a new variant called Flirt. In reality, it's the who gives a fuck variant. If you're a journalist who can't let go of a 4-year-old cold, you should be fired. 90% of the world feels that way. I think he's talking about the coof. But yeah, like who gives a fuck, right?
Yeah. I still see people running around with masks on. It's crazy.
And the crazy thing is it's come out where people said like, yeah, they basically just made up these things to kind of keep people from panicking. They don't actually work.
Last night at work, I literally watched a person with a mask under their nose, not wearing it correctly, and then they had to cough, so they pulled it out and went and then put the mask back on their face. I'm like, what are you doing? It was just
It's a face diaper, just like South Park
Yeah,
said.
yeah. Chin strap. Yep.
Humanity. All right, Marks 47, a member for 9 months. I'll never accept an I heard rumor from Hildago.
Absolutely.
Nor should you, sir. Pablo Hildago, Vader, you don't have a very high opinion of him, do you?
No,
Does anybody?
he can
No.
F off with George. No, that dude. I've never despised a person more, I think, than this dude. He's just the worst. He's just a bad human being.
And if rumors are to be believed, he was the one leading the charge against Gina Carano behind the scenes.
Heard that.
So,
Probably.
yeah. Bohemian Paul for $10. Vader is right. We don't hear that too often.
Not too often.
There are only 2 good Star Wars movies. The rest suck.
There it is. There
On
they are,
cue.
Tom.
Yeah.
So now do you have the despecialized ones there, Odin? Is that what those are? Okay, so
Yes.
these are actually from the 4K scans that they did.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
so these are actually, and I want to thank Rick for sending me those, because he actually sent me the earlier versions, but then he sent me the full-fledged 4K plus.
Is it the
together
Project
this-
4K version?
Yes.
Okay,
and, so also he put together this nice set that has all the making of featurettes plus from Star Wars to Jedi.
That's a great cover. Look how regal and poised.
Yeah, he did
George
he does
is
a
on there.
great
That's the
job
one
with
thing
these.
I still need to figure out is how
And
to
the
do the actual
discs
covers.
He
for
does
these
are
things.
just amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and they look great. I'll try and hook you up with him, Odin, if not.
Yeah,
'cause
dude.
He does a great job with
Even
this
if you can
stuff.
just tell me what kind of printer to get to do the
Yeah,
actual like
I don't
slip
know what
covers,
he
because that's the one
has.
thing. That's like the one thing I don't know how to do.
Because these do look completely 100%
Yeah.
legit. They feel
Yeah.
legit. They're the right
Mhm.
stock and everything, the right quality.
Wow.
It's beautiful.
Like if you saw this in a store, you would think it's the real thing.
Yep.
Like the only time you would know it's not is once you actually look at the bottom of the disc.
Yep.
Because even he's got it printed on the disc and everything.
Ah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I got him working on slip covers now.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, Harmy's the Specialized and Project 4K are definitely the 2 best, but Project 4K is phenomenal. That's the digital version I have on my home server.
Yeah, those look good, but like the 4K project, it almost made me cry
Yeah.
the first time I fired up the first film, because I'm like, I have not seen this movie look like this
Mm-hmm.
since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Because George completely changed the color timing and everything of the film, you realize. And it's just like, now it looks like it looked when I was younger. It's insane.
Okay, enough nerding out about physical media. We got one more super chat.
Yeah, sorry.
Doomed Huh for $2. We want Brian. Well, so
No.
does his Mexican wife, who requires
Mexican Mother's
mimosas on Mexican Mother's Day. Indeed. All right, guys. So just want to let everyone know that we are now up to, we need 14 more super chats to hit our goal for today and 4 more gifted subs. So if you guys out there want to help us hit our goals, we'd really appreciate it. All right, guys. So now let's talk about the thing that was on the thumbnail of this live stream. The new Lord of the Rings movies have been announced. And this is crazy because we know we're getting a season 2 of the show that shall not be named, but I'm going to name it anyway, The Rings of Power off of Amazon. But for those of you who don't know, so The Rings of Power is a Amazon production where Amazon has like sort of the licenses to the Silmarillion. It's really unclear, but Warner Brothers still has the movie licenses for Lord of the Rings, and they're putting out an animated Lord of the Rings movie called the War of the Rohirrim or Rohan, however you
Rohirrim?
pronounce it.
Rohirrim.
Rohirrim. Thank you. And I am the destroyer of words. But so in addition to that, they've been really trying hard to get like a new live action Lord of the Rings off the ground. They finally got Peter Jackson, who is the producer and director of all the other Lord of the Rings live action movies that they've done. And he has signed on board to be the producer. His writing partners who wrote the other movies are on board, and they're creating a new movie called The Hunt for Gollum. And Andy Serkis, who did the mocap for Gollum and the voice, is not only returning as Gollum, but he's also going to be directing this movie that's coming out. And this is kind of, from what we understand, the very first movie in what they hope to make a series of new live action Lord of the Rings movies. Now, Lord of the Rings is one of the most beloved film franchises on the planet. People have very fond memories of those. Their anniversaries just kind of rolled around recently, and so like a lot of people have been watching them at these nostalgic replays in theaters, and we keep getting special editions with even more found footage and stuff like that. So a lot of people are looking forward to this, but at the same time they're cautious because every time you resurrect a beloved franchise, you tend to ruin it a little bit. So Vader, I want to throw this to you first and foremost. How could Warner Brothers screw this up?
Well, they can just. How can they screw it up? They can DEI it and they can just make stuff up. And I'm a little bit concerned because my understanding is, and now listen, I am not a Tolkien scholar by any means. I've read through the books once. I made myself read them before I went and watched the original movies 20 years ago because I wasn't going to watch the movies without reading the books first. And those movies, everybody knows they're classics. It's probably the best trilogy for a movie franchise ever made. I love them. Everybody loves these movies, and it's because they made them correctly. They were mostly faithful to the material, and they treated the characters with respect, and everything was done right with these things. And that's what we've always loved about Peter Jackson and his crew. They treat these things correctly. And then they turned the Hobbit into 3 movies, and everybody kind of went, what's going on here? And there's some good stuff there too. But I mean, come on, we got nine hours out of a book that takes you 2 hours to read through. It was a little bit crazy. And now I think we're all just a little bit concerned because my understanding is this part that they're making this movie from, it comes from like 2 paragraphs in the books that I don't even remember reading anywhere in there. So yes, I'm a little bit concerned that they're just going to have a money grab here. I mean, the team is right, and I'm sure it's going to look great. I'm sure it's going to be a beautiful movie. But I'm wondering a little bit how they're going to make probably a 4.5 hour long movie out of 2 paragraphs in that's somewhere inserted in a book. So that's my concern. But if there's a team out there that can do it, I guess this is the one, right? I wouldn't trust anybody else with making a Lord of the Rings movie right now than the team that made the original movies to begin with. So I'm a little bit concerned, excuse me, because they're going to have to recast people. Is Gandalf in this movie? Is McClellan, isn't he like 95 years old now? I mean, is he retired? These actors are all, aging out of these roles. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they do, so I guess we'll find out.
From what I understand, this happens before Gollum becomes like the emaciated, like after he finds the ring and people are searching for the ring. And so like, I don't think any of the characters really cross over except maybe the elves.
That's when it takes.
I know. I think this is supposed to be having to do with man, I can't think of his name all of a sudden. I'm sorry. I'm blanking out. Yeah.
Because I was going to say, I think we're supposed to. This is supposed to be when Aragorn is tracking him down between the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings. That's my understanding. I could be wrong.
That's my understanding as well.
But as far as like they could just de-age anybody they bring in. And as far as
I guess
Strider
so.
goes, he's in a cloak most of the time, so it could just be his voice, and they just have a stand-in too. We don't even know how much we're going to see of other characters if that's the case. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know too much about this. I just heard about this the same time you guys did, and honestly, I would have normally been like, oh no, please don't do this. But I trust Andy Serkis. In fact, he's one of the things that I think was missing from this recent Apes film that just came out. I don't know if we'll talk about that more later or not, but I think this was more of just a big FU to Amazon. And as far as like the two lines or a paragraph or whatever that they're using for the storyline, I mean, that's basically what Amazon did, didn't they? So this is Peter Jackson going, here, hold my beer, watch what I can do.
It's good.
And it's Warner Brothers saying, like, no, this is the real Lord of the Rings. If you read the actual thing that they put out, they use, you know, like Peter and Fran and Philippa are the keepers of the lore of Professor Tolkien's lore. Like they were really like the absolute opposite of everything Amazon was doing. And I'm like, these guys are brilliant.
Yeah, well, like I said, this
Like,
is
movie
the
could
right
suck
team to do it.
rocks and it'll still be good because it's a big FU to the Amazon people. That's just what I took from it anyway.
Well, Tom, do you think that there's any danger of Warner Brothers harming the brand? Because even though The Hobbit performed well, a lot of people didn't like it as much as Lord of the Rings. And so, like, it's not like Peter Jackson's infallible. But obviously, you know, their strategy before they got Peter Jackson on board was we're just going to make animated movies to keep the rights. But now that the rights were sold off to this like weird foreign company, and now like they're kind of licensing them out left and right. They needed to hold on to the movie rights because they know that that's like a lucrative thing. So do you think that there's anything that could possibly go wrong with this?
Oh, I'm sure it could. And even though The Hobbit wasn't as well received, I mean, I wouldn't say it was on the level of the prequels like we were just talking, for instance.
There's good stuff in there.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, and even you could at least, I'm sure there's 20 cuts out there that fans have done where they've cut it down to just what's in the books.
And it's great.
Or the book of The Hobbit. Yeah, exactly. So, and Odin's obviously seen it. So my point is there's still a fan base for this. The core fan base knows there's a difference between Peter Jackson, Warner Brothers, Lord of the Rings, and Amazon, Lord of the Rings. In fact, I heard that Amazon had actually paid some money to Warner Brothers to be able to use some of the characters. So who's to say Warner Brothers just isn't using the money they got from Amazon and infusing it into this, and is like, hey, it could be the biggest FU in history, because really, like I said, is it like, you know, you want some real Lord of the Rings kids? Here you go. And it makes sense. Do it with Gollum. He's a very well-known character. Andy Serkis is beloved. If there's a character who we can follow, I mean, even if it's just Gollum through the whole movie, it'll be more entertaining than Castaway, because we know he can act against himself. Like, that's one of the greatest bits in Two Towers is when Smeagol and Gollum are talking to each other. Like, that's some of my favorite stuff. So if that's what this movie's going to be, then great. And it's supposed to be from his point of view. Cool. I mean, could it be crap? Possibly. But is it going to be any worse than anything Rings of Power has out there? No. And we don't know what the second project is yet either, because they announced that there is going to be 2. This was going to be the first one. Who's to say the second one isn't going to be the big ba-bow? That's going to be like Peter Jackson saying, yeah, I'm going to do something out of the Silmarillion or something like that. You know, that's going to lead up to Lord of the Rings or something really cool. Like, we don't know. He may direct something, because he hasn't directed a movie in a while. He's just been mainly doing documentary stuff and working on Beatles stuff.
Restoration, yeah.
Yeah, so who's to say that he won't turn around and say, yeah, I'm going to do, you know, a story right out of the Silmarillion or something like that. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yep. You know, Gothix, a video game company not too long ago, tried to make a video game centered around Gollum.
I heard.
And it did not go over well. It was widely considered one of the worst video games ever made. Maybe slightly above E.T. For the Atari. But you know, it looks like that the Hunt for Gollum, it's going to be like a standalone movie. It's not going to be like a trilogy or anything like that. But it might be the first of what like Marvel had, or I should say Star Wars had a model of, you know, releasing like a Star Wars story movie where it was kind of like a story that doesn't take place within the main trilogy, but it's just kind of set in the same world. But Lord of the Rings has kind of had a hard time when it comes to translating over to video games. Like, there was Middle Earth Online, which did really well. I think it's still even going. But then like they've tried to put out other video games with varying degrees of success. Do you think that you know, putting out new movies is going to help the Lord of the Rings video game license at all?
They think, but no, I don't think so at all. Yeah, like I said, I've never seen the Lord of the Rings, but I actually vaguely remember buying a Lord of the Rings video game and was pissed because I got through it in like 2 hours, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
paid money for this. So, no, I don't think that making more movies. It seems like they're just trying to milk the franchise as much as possible instead of coming up with new ideas. Which, I mean, I get it. You're pulling on the heartstrings of people who already are fans of the franchise, but yeah, I just don't see this working out for them personally.
Yeah, would you play any new Lord of the Rings games that come out because of this?
Probably no, especially no. Especially, I mean, honestly, I don't even really buy video games all that much anymore because I don't want to be highly disappointed buying DEI crap.
Do you think that you could actually get DEI in the movies? Because I know that Rings of Power took a lot of flack for, making black elves where, like, in Tolkien's lore, like they're all kind of like homogenous.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are saying the orcs are just like a thinly veiled metaphor for black people. Like there's all that stuff out there, but do you think that they'd actually inject any of that into the movies?
That's so stupid. I mean, it's possible. I mean, they can do anything. The guy's not around to say otherwise, right? So, I mean, yeah, I guess.
Right on.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone out there in the chat has played Middle Earth Online, but if you have, let us know what you thought of it in the chat or in the comments if you're watching this on the replay. I want to throw this to Odin. So Odin, I know that Warner Brothers is going through a kind of a time of upheaval. They're still, after Discovery took them over, they're still doing things to kind of clean up the house that was left in such a mess when they took over from AT&T. They've cut back on production. They're trying to consolidate their streaming services because it's like a money loser. And Lord of the Rings is one of their big IPs, and they've just been kind of sitting on it for a while. They haven't really done anything with it outside of the video game stuff. But we've got this animated feature film coming down the line, which will be coming out this year. And then I believe it's 2026. They're planning to have this Gollum movie come out. From a purely financial studio perspective, why aren't they doing more with their Lord of the Rings movie licenses, do you think?
It's so hard because I think a lot of it probably is because they, especially now in the era of CG and especially with this franchise, The Hobbit being a good example of this, they're already guaranteed to be costing a lot. And I think also they realize that whereas The Lord of the Rings made a boatload of money and The Hobbit did okay, right? I think that alone probably is what gives them a little bit of pause because they say, oh, okay, Hobbit wasn't nearly as well received. Okay, didn't quite reach the same heights as what the original Lord of the Rings trilogy did. So my guess is that they realize how, when it comes to fan bases, I think that most people would admit that when it comes to passion and caring about the material, I think Tolkien fans are probably one of the more hardcore bases, right? They're not going to just go out and support something just because it has Lord of the Rings in the title, right? I think you could look at Amazon Rings of Power as a great example of that, right? A lot of actual fans of Tolkien's work were like, this is ridiculous. This is not Tolkien, right? They got a lot of backlash for that. And so my guess is in Amazon's case, right? So I think Warner Brothers is probably looking at the same way, saying, if we're ever going to do something, we have to do it right. And if we don't do it right, we're going to probably pay the price because of how much it costs typically to make these things. So I think that's probably why they've been a little bit more cautious, because even their video games, I was trying to look back, and because I really haven't really played a lot of their games, and it looked like really up until after The Hobbit was made, every single game that was really made in this, the 3D era of gaming were all just basically ripoffs of the film, where you would just play through some elements of the film. Maybe a couple things were changed here and there is what I'm gathering from it. But, because you had basically Fellowship, you had War of the Ring. I don't know if that was, I guess that would have been more potentially. You had the Hobbit game and then Lord of the Rings Online. So again, never having played that myself, I don't know exactly how good or bad that might have been. But yeah, I think that ultimately it's probably more so to do with that, right? That they're going to be a lot more careful, especially with movies, especially with how much movies cost these days and how much they're going to have to spend on it. So I'm going to be very interested to actually watch this, see how this project goes and how much they end up spending, because, Andy Serkis, that's the other factor that people maybe don't think about as much, because I know that he is a fan. I know that he is someone that does care about the material. Listening to just the voice work he did on the audiobooks, for instance, they redid the audiobooks, and he does a great job. It's one of the things when my daughter was still very young. She's still 7 months, but when she was like baby, my wife and I were listening literally to Andy Serkis reading The Hobbit. And it's just, he does such a great job. He has a lot of passion for it. So I think that he is a good person in that regard. But then you have to also look at what he's done before, right? And I never saw Mowgli, so I don't know exactly how good or bad that may have been. But he obviously has done some things that, you know, at least in the case of, I'm trying to think about what it was.
Didn't
Venom.
he do a Venom sequel?
Venom Let There Be Carnage. Yeah.
No, it wasn't
which
good.
was not good, right? But again, one could easily argue studio, because the first film he did, Breathe, I actually really liked. And I thought was pretty well done. So he obviously has some chops. He obviously also was a second unit director on the Hobbit films, and so he's got some experience. But I think that if they're going to do it, they got to do it right. And it sounds like getting someone like Peter Jackson back involved, and everyone else kind of there, as long as they're able to get those writers in and they're able to take it seriously, it could be good. But again, only time will really tell.
Hey, what book reader or is the Amazon version? Is it Kindle?
Yeah, it's called Kindle. Yeah,
In Kindle, okay. Because I think I want Andy Serkis to read Lord of the Rings too.
Oh yeah, Audible.
That
Audible is
sounds-
where you get the audiobook.
Audible.
Yeah.
That sounds fantastic. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Good, just
you
beyond the Smeagol stuff too, right? Because the Smeagol stuff, you're like, you get to hear like the entire riddles in the dark, right? Not just what they did in the Hobbit films. So that's just great. But then he also does a lot of the other characters well.
I think I have a free credit I can use on there somewhere. So
Yeah,
nice.
I'd recommend
Would be better
listening
if
to
he-
it.
Would be better if he read it as Caesar.
What's fun is that he actually seems to do some impersonations of some of the characters from the films too, which I like, because it's like, oh, he's sounding a lot like Ian McKellen as Gandalf, and I'm like, oh, that's just like, you're like, oh man, they work together. That's nice. Again, it's like very nostalgic too to listen.
Or it would have been better had he done the whole thing as Smeagol.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to throw this out.
This is wrong.
I want to throw this out to the panel. How do you think Amazon's Lord of the Ring or Rings of Power is going to affect the movies? Do you think that there's going to be like a schism where the Rings of Power happen in their own universe as opposed to like, you know, the true Lord of the Rings universe? Or could people get confused about like, you know, like, oh, is this all, you know, under one umbrella, one shared universe? Like, kind of interested in that, because from what I've seen, like, you know, we all watched the Rings of Power on the show, RIP Jeff. And it was not good. It was like they made, you know, characters.
Don Lemonless.
Yeah. Basically, they just injected DEI hardcore into it, and it was also dumb. It was really poorly written. So I don't know if that damaged the brand at all, or if it was just something where like people are like, oh, Amazon's just screwing things up, and we're going to ignore that going forward. But season 2 is coming out, and people are wondering, like, is it going to get better, or is it just going to double down on all the worst qualities of it? So I just want to get the panel's general idea of like how they think Rings of Power is going to play into Warner Brothers' success with this.
I don't think it's going to have much of effect of it at all. I have no intention really of watching Rings of Power, other than the fact that we might watch some of it to talk about on here. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what we're doing with it, Matt. You're going to have to let me know.
He's going to make us watch it.
He's probably going to make us watch it. But you're not going to stop me from going to watch this Gollum thing at the theater when it comes out. I'm actually kind of looking forward to it because I want to see what they do. But Rings of Power, I'm like, and I don't think I'm alone in the way I'm thinking about that. You know what I mean? Especially people in my generation, our generation, you know, we're all very interested, I think, in what Peter Jackson's going to do. He's one of my favorite, you know, directors, producers, whatever you want to call them these days. Except for that terrible movie that Matt tried to make me watch one time when he was in college or some shit. But
hey, Bad Taste is one of the
awful.
best things ever made.
Terrible, but it's gross. But yeah, I don't think I can separate the two. I have no problem doing that. So I guess we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and kind of just maybe adding to what I had said before, I think, again, when you deal with Lord of the Rings fans in general, even not just like hardcore book fans, but I think even fans of the film, they tend to be, and this is not a dig at any other fan base out there, but they tend to be a little bit smarter. right? That they tend to be like, okay, yeah, clearly this is not Lord of the Rings, or like, okay, yeah, there's something not right here. And so they're not like that monolith that sometimes, you know, MCU used to be, right? Now it's gotten to the point where even MCU can't bring everybody out. But Lord of the Rings, like, that fan base, I feel like, is going to act a lot quicker, right? Whereas it took several years and movies to kind of lead to the downfall of the MCU. If they were to do something bad with you know, anything related to Lord of the Rings, I think it would be, you know, pretty much overnight.
I want to talk to Gothix about this a little bit, because Gothix, by all measures, you're the exact demographic that these studios and studio heads are trying to target by injecting, you know, like diversity and inclusion into these franchises. But, you know, you've flat out said, like, you haven't seen any Star Wars, you don't care about it. You don't seem like a big Lord of the Rings person. And typically, like, science fiction and fantasy are kind of male dominated genres where, like, women just don't care about them, and my wife included. Like, she's like, I've seen the first Star Wars, I don't care about any of the rest. You know, like, she likes Lord of the Rings, but that's because she's a book fan. But for the most part, it just seems like women by and large aren't really into this stuff as much as Hollywood wants them to be. And so, like, they keep trying to say, like, hey, come over here, like, be a girl boss, like, do all this stuff with lightsabers. But just from, like, your point of view, like it doesn't seem to be working on you. Do you think it's actually working on other people?
Well, like, I'm not opposed to watching The Lord of the Rings. I just never got around to it. Star Wars in particular, it doesn't appeal to me. I mean, as far as it working, I mean, I see women who like these types of movies, like fantasy. I have no problems with it. But no, I think it's not working because, first of all, they're trying to appeal to people using something that isn't even an aspect of the product. So, like, this whole girl boss thing, it has nothing to do with Lord of the Rings. It has nothing to do with Star Wars, but they're trying to appeal to people who are girl bosses. But it's like, that's not organic. So the people that you appeal to, it's like when people say, oh, representation. We want representation in these nerdy fields. Well, if these people who are screeching about representation don't actually care about the products that they claim to care about, then you're going to see a turnover rate for these people anyway. It's fake support. It's not organic. And that's not how you build lifelong fans of a franchise. So, and I think that they know that too. Like, I don't think that these people are just stupid and they're just, like, doing all this for no reason. Like, I think that they know that it's inflating their numbers, but they're not getting new people to enjoy their stuff.
Yeah, I think and Tom and Odin, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think, like, the common knowledge or common lie that studio executives tell themselves is, like, okay, we have the white male demographic sewn up for, like, these properties. So if we can bring in other demographics, like more women, you know, more people of color, stuff like that, we're going to make even more money in the long run because we're expanding the fan base. But by doing that, they do it in such a ham-fisted way, like Gothix said, that they actually alienate a good portion of the fan base that they supposedly have locked up. And so in the long run, the people who aren't already part of the fan base, like, they don't really care. Kind of like how Gothix, she's like, you know, like, I'll watch it, but I was just not interested in it, you know? And I feel like a lot of, like, women are like that when it comes to genre movies, like, you know, action, science fiction, fantasy.
Well, yeah, it's pretty much like anything. And the earlier example of this that I can think of that's probably one of the better ones was when He-Man was the biggest toy franchise on the planet, and they noticed, oh, girls are into this too, because they had a pretty decent demographic of girls that watched Masters of the Universe. So they decided, well, let's do a girls line. And the Barbie side of Mattel said that, you know, if you're going to do a girls line, we have to be involved, because they didn't take too kindly to being beat by He-Man, because Barbie was the #1 toy forever. And they came in and they destroyed that toy brand, because they basically made it for girls and only for girls, and boys, it turned them off, right? Like, the original demographic are like, well, they just made my toy for my sister now. I don't want to do She-Ra's hair. Fuck that. You know, and not only that, they made it completely incompatible with the original He-Man line. So, like, you had all the male characters on the She-Ra side of things. They were just the same size as She-Ra. They were tiny. To where you got He-Man, who's hulking, you know, and he doesn't match up. To where even though on the cartoon they would cross over, which was fine for boys, but in the toys they didn't cross over. When your you know, kid sisters playing with your toys now, they're no longer cool.
Well, you didn't. You,
You know,
never had
and
your
that's
boys play with Barbies. Come on, dude.
well, that's a little bit different. But my point is like that's just kind of a an overall kind of look at like a simplified version of this, and it works the same way with Star Wars, Ghostbusters, you name it. The girls who were into Star Wars, like Gothix said, it's just not her thing. Well, she's probably not going to like it no matter what you do to Star Wars. Adding anything to it is not going to make her like it because then it's not going to be Star Wars anymore anyway.
Well, Star Wars was a boys brand, dude.
Yeah, but there were
Wars
plenty
was
of
made for
girls
us.
that liked it, and now
Yeah,
you're
but-
turning off the girls that did like it because now you're trying to pander to them, and that's not what they asked
Oh,
for.
also, Tom, it's interesting because, like, you talked about how girls were watching He-Man,
Mhm.
and just from like a common sense perspective, it's like, well, girls wanted to see like a muscular dude in his underwear running
Heroic,
around,
yeah.
like, yeah. But if you look at like Marvel movies, the women showed up for that because Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth and
and stuff like that, yeah.
these good looking dudes that they were like, oh, I want to, like I took my wife to see Aquaman. The only reason she liked it was because Jason Momoa was in wet jeans
Jason
for
Momoa.
2 hours.
Mhm.
Yeah. So like, the way to attract women to the guy brands is to make it sexy, but nobody's seen, like, go ahead. No.
No, I was gonna say, I think to kind of add to that, I don't know if anyone uses Movio, but they do demographics. Fall Guy, right? You would think, okay, probably going to appeal to that male demographic. It was about 60-40 for
I'm
men.
not surprised women.
So again, 40% of that audience being women, that makes complete sense, right? Because there's probably a lot who said, hey, I'm going to want to see Ryan Gosling, right?
Well,
and go ahead.
I just wanted to say, Andre did. He looked it up remember when Charlie's Angels came out a few years back.
Mhm.
That remake with Elizabeth Banks and all those people did. That came out right around the same time as Rambo Last Blood. Andre went and looked through the demographics. More women went to see Rambo Last Blood than what went to Charlie's Angels.
Well, what's funny is
So that just goes to show you what they're interested in. They weren't interested in that. version of Charlie's Angels.
What's funny is Charlie's Angels is meant to attract the male demographic because you got 3 hot chicks going out doing action stuff.
And what
right?
did it do? It didn't do that because it was trying to gain the female demographic that wasn't into that kind of thing.
Well, it basically said we're not going to cast hot girls. We're not going to do anything like original or new. And it was the same problem that I got almost canceled for Birds of Prey, where I came out and I'm like, they're making these women as unappealing as possible. And dudes aren't going to show up for this movie. And everyone's like, oh, it's not made for you. You're an old white guy. I'm
Look,
like,
if you're
okay,
gonna
well,
do women action movies, put them in bikinis. Okay.
yeah,
That's just
totally.
the bottom line.
Just
what
look
you
at what
gotta
the
do.
80s did and do that.
That's it.
It'll work every
you go.
time.
There you go.
Well, because that's where we were at peak, right? Like cocaine and capitalism. They're like, okay, how do we get more cocaine? We make movies that people will just pay time and time and time and time and time and time and time again to see, right?
Yep, exactly.
So that's all they did is they just gave us exactly what we wanted.
We want hot chicks, big boobs, and bikinis with really big guns. That's what I want. There you go.
Or
That's
dinosaurs and Ninja Turtles,
Yeah.
or whatever. Like they would just give it to us. And
We're
sometimes
men-
they'd screw up and they'd be like,
we're-
sorry, we're screwed up. We're going to go back and give you what you like. Just wait.
We're
And they would
simple.
do that.
we're simple creatures. We're simple
Yeah.
creatures.
And even in the dude end, it's like Schwarzenegger and Stallone. It's just like, give us guys with huge muscles.
That's it.
They don't have to speak. They just run around blowing shit up. Occasionally
There's a
they make out
formula
with a
to
girl.
it.
We see a boob.
know.
It's all good.
We need like lines like "get to the chopper," stuff like that. That's all you need. That's all you need.
Exactly.
we're good.
Remember when I said I was going to kill you last? Yeah, I lied.
Yeah, good job. You get
I
your
hope
ass
you
to
like the
Oz.
taste of my fist. Then go ram it into your stomach. Yes.
Consider this a divorce. Yeah,
I'll be back only in reruns.
simple.
No, it was simple. It was exactly like Top Gun. It's not even a movie. It's not. It's a music video and it's an ad for the Air Force and the
There you
Navy.
go.
That's all it really is.
Made me
But we
cry.
love it because of the music and it's got Tom Cruise going, and stuff like
He
that.
was
I mean,
inverted. He was inverted.
And they,
You know what I
and they have hot sweaty dudes playing volleyball for the girls. I mean, come on.
and for some of the guys,
And some of the
see,
guys,
even
yeah.
gay 80s were cool,
yeah.
right? Like, even
mean,
then, it was like,
Friday the
even I-
13th
even-
too. Yeah.
Even
Or
I looked at that
Nightmare on Elm
volleyball
Street.
scene. Even I looked at that volleyball scene and went, "Damn, those are good-looking dudes."
questioned
so
your sexuality.
I did a
bit.
little bit, just a little, just a little.
Just a little. Vader's just a little gay.
Just a little
That's all
gay.
it is.
But
Just
I've
a
said it
little.
before. The 90s is, I think, the time when they had figured it out so well that if you go back and look between all the avenues that Hollywood had, I think that's when they were making the most money ever. Between theaters, home video, cable, network television, all those different outlets, plus all the merchandising stuff they had. I can't think of a time that Hollywood was more profitable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, between probably 1980 and 1999, 2000, somewhere in there. I mean, because we kind of started to figure out the formula around Godzilla. Phantom Menace and Godzilla is, I think, the kind of the gap stop where we're like, okay, hold up. You know, you tricked us into the theater early and you got our money already. See, and that's when people started getting a little smarter and not going right away. Because that used to be like, you know, a movie like Godzilla made all its money in its opening weekend. And it didn't really have to make another dime after that, even though it did. But even though it was successful, Sony could tell that people didn't like it. So they were like, well, we're not going to keep going with that. But they still re-release it over and over and over again because people still buy it. But yeah, it's weird how that works.
We got to get some super chats real quick. So Major Chai Chai gifted 1 Salty Nerd podcast membership. Thank you so much, Major Chai Chai. And we have Brian's super fan, Fluffy Panda, for $5. With the way Terry Matalas redeemed Star Trek in Picard Season 3, and that will never get that closure with Star Wars and Mark with bad Trump derangement syndrome, I say recast/remake EFF it. Or F it, I should say. Yeah, recast and remake Star Wars F it.
You know,
well, the latest rumor is Mark Hamill's coming back.
Sorry, great. No, I was just gonna say at this point, you know, I don't care if they remake Star Wars now. I just don't care. Do it. Let me see what you got. I mean, Mark Hamill has just destroyed any semblance of hope I had for that original cast. And quite frankly, I think Harrison Ford has a bad attitude, but he's had a bad attitude about Star Wars for a very long time. You know, just kill my characters, like whatever. Just I'll come back if you let me die. You know, that kind of stuff. You know, and of course Carrie. You know, she doesn't. Nothing we can do about that. So, I just don't care anymore. So remake it.
I'll be surprised if he has time to act now that he's the new White House press secretary. So yeah. All right, guys. So let's talk. Like we talked about Star Wars, we talked about Disney, we talked about Lord of the Rings. Let's talk about Marvel. Hit the trifecta for this live stream. So, guys, Bob Iger came out and said that Marvel is getting a makeover, and he said, "I've been working really closely with the team that's fucked everything up under my leadership, and we're going to talk about a new content strategy for Marvel." And there's an article here in Variety, link in the description. And basically, Bob Iger, now that he is firmly in control of Disney once more, he has been working hard with Kevin Feige and all those idiots over there at Marvel to talk about their release schedule. And basically, the long and short of this is that they have decided that instead of doing 4 TV shows a year, they're only going to do 2. And instead of doing, instead of doing 4 movies a year, they're going to do 2. And instead of doing 3 TV shows a year, they're going to only be doing 1 or 2. So it's like they're like, we're going to focus more on quality other than quantity. But it's the exact same people who are making all the shitty stuff from the past couple of years. So basically things over at Marvel are still kind of like that meme of the dog sitting there in the burning house and it's like, oh, this is fine. But I want to get Tom's take on this because it was kind of touch and go there for Iger for a bit with like the Nelson Peltz proxy fight for the Disney board. And now that he's kind of like won that battle thanks to George Lucas and a bunch of other people, it's now business as usual. But it's just like, oh, we're not going to spend as much money on the crap we're putting out as we once were, but it's still going to be crap. What's your take on this?
So in other words, your strategy is to just lose less money.
Yeah,
because you're right. Like what you're saying is you're not actually going to change anything, right? So it's like a restaurant who's sitting there going, okay, the problem is we're making too many pizzas. If we make less pizzas, then it'll be better. Well, are you going to change the ingredients? Nope. Are you going to change how you bake them? Nope. Just going to make less of them. We'll make more money. Trust me on this. That's exactly what he's saying. It's like, no, you're not addressing the core issue. Because the problem wasn't quantity. It never was. And it was the same crap he said with Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, Has anything ever that's ever been popular said, you know what, we need to make less of this, we're making too much money? It's like, no, that's not how it works. Even creating scarcity, all that did was hurt the gaming industry, right? Because Nintendo's been well known for that for years, for creating this generic scarcity of their game systems and stuff like that. And Sony's been also one known for doing stuff like that and whatnot too. But like, all it does is hurt your brand at the end of the day and creates poachers and stupid stuff like that. And then it just turns the fan base off. The quantity was never the problem of the Marvel films. It was who was making them and what you were doing, right? So if you still make the same kind of crap, it's still going to have the same result, Bob. And no, I don't think Peltz is going anywhere. I think this time, if he does not actually shape up, Peltz is going to come in with nukes, because the last 2 times have been warnings, right? It's like, fool me once, Bob, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you, kind of thing. And he's not going to let it happen again. And this has been one of those things that Marvel should be keeping Disney afloat. And I've said this time and time again. They are the ones that are responsible for destroying what could have been something the industry could have kept going for the next 20 years. All they had to do is just keep churning out these superhero movies, and there's a fan base for them now. There's a whole generation that's been trained to only watch these kind of movies. Tarantino and Scorsese were right, whether you'd agree with them or not. Tarantino laid it out better. He's like, kids nowadays have been raised on Marvel and Harry Potter. They wouldn't know what to do with one of my movies. They wouldn't even know what to do with like a Taxi Driver. But now if you put Joker in it, that's a different story, right? Because kids understand that. So we've hit a point where you have saturated us with crap. It's not a saturation of films. It's a saturation of crap. And I need to remind people again that we were spoiled by Marvel. Okay, almost all superhero movies were crap before then. They've been crap ever since then. You're lucky if you get 1 out of 10 that's any good. Like for every, Blade, you get 20 Judge Dredds. That was the norm. We had tank girls out the ass. You know what I mean? And Barbarellas and
Barbed wire.
Barbed wire.
And then when they make a
Stuff
good
like
movie
that,
like
yeah.
Dread, they don't make the sequel for it that everybody wants.
Well,
They
and
would
that's
just-
our fault too,
it's
to a
insane.
point, because we didn't go see it. And instead of actually
Yeah.
buying the Blu-ray, more people downloaded it. That was the
Fantastic
other
movie.
problem. Because Lionsgate noticed that a bunch of people pirated it. It was popular, but it wasn't popular enough for people to get off their butts and actually buy it from the store.
Yeah.
And so in that case, they were like, we're not going to spend the money on it anymore. So yeah, Marvel did this to themselves, like you said.
Yeah. So Matt Vader,
Hmm.
here's the list of movies that Marvel has in the pipeline that's coming down the road in 2025.
Oh, I can't wait to see this.
All right. So we have the Thunderbolts movie, which nobody cares about.
Nobody cares.
We have the Blade movie, which I'll be amazed if that ever
I-
actually gets made.
I cared about that 10 years ago when they said they were going to first make it.
Yeah.
And now I don't care about it anymore.
We have the Fantastic Four movie, which is shaping up to be a DEI nightmare.
Looks
It
like a piece of crap. I lost all interest in that as soon as they announced the cast. So
But-
they're 3 for 3 so far. Let's go.
But speaking of, so like the big release, which is going to lead into their next Avengers movie, which Bob Iger was really touting,
Can't wait.
is the DEI-tastic Captain America: Brave New World with
Yeah.
Anthony Mackie as the new Captain Falcon.
They're-
And you know what's terrible about this is like I really like Anthony Mackie.
Yeah,
Like,
me
he's
too.
He's a really good actor. He's a cool guy, but like they clown him up so much in these movies. So do you think that with this lineup, even if Deadpool and Wolverine hits, do you think Marvel is actually going to make it into this next phase?
I think collectively between those 4 movies, and maybe Odin might agree with me here. I don't know or not. I foresee a collective $200 million loss between those 4 movies. So
just
I have-
200 million?
Maybe
yeah,
higher, actually,
between that's a low ball number. Okay, I didn't want to
Yeah.
like go too high. I have no interest in seeing any of those films. None. No interest at all. And I don't really have anything else to say. I mean, they've lost me. Just like Star Wars, they've lost me. I don't want to spend my own money on any of them. So, and I probably won't. I mean, and that's all I have to say. That it's just a bunch of crap and stories that nobody cares about. Instead of going back and mining the IP for good stories that they could have told from 5 decades of interesting things, they got to come straight up into, the modern crap. And no, I don't want to watch it, and I'm not going to. So that's what I have. So that's all I got. Sorry.
For those of you in our chat, let us know if any of those movies sound exciting to you. But speaking of exciting, Odin, we have the Agatha TV show to look forward to.
Oh,
down
yes.
The spinoff that everyone wanted from WandaVision. And when they started doing these Marvel TV shows, it was because they needed inventory for their streaming service when lockdown happened and people were like really hungry for content. And now that that's kind of like past them, they're like, okay, we can scale back on this stuff. But like, I can't think of like one Marvel TV show that I was like, oh yeah, this was great, I'm gonna rewatch this. So the idea here that they're gonna be making like less of this stuff, nobody cares because nobody's watching it in the first place. Like, I doubt many people watched Echo when it came out. I don't think anyone's going to watch Agatha. Like they've changed the name of it like 8 or 10 different times. So from a purely kind of business standpoint, because the streaming service is still losing Disney money, box office is down simply because people aren't going to theaters because Bidenomics has made it so expensive. What's your take on the strategy here? Do you think Bob Iger's strategy of less is more is going to work out for them financially?
Absolutely not. Again, 2023 was a great piece of evidence, right? Because every single film that they released, not even just from Marvel, but from every other studio that they have under their gigantic, questionable antitrust violation stuff, none of them made money. Not a single one, right? The only film that at one point was arguably profitable, we just now recently found out, because even though Tony over at Deadline tried to argue that somehow Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 made money, if you actually look to where he gets a lot of the money from, including the money Disney paid itself to put it on streaming, as he counted that as revenue, you realize, oh, wait a minute, they didn't. They probably lost around $30 million or so on that one, which was their most successful. And so that's the big issue, is that even if they make less, their films, in a best case scenario, which you look to a film like that one more recently being a success, has a cap of around $850 million. But when they're still spending over $200 million on all of these projects, when they're still making the vast majority of their money overseas than domestically, because they've not recovered anything close to what their domestic numbers used to be, it means that they're in a lot of trouble, because they're making way too much overseas where they get a lot less back. They're spending way too much money on their actual budgets, and they're higher than what's reported by the different places. And also their marketing is still out of control too. So they've got really nothing going for them. And so I think some are going to try to argue that, oh, clearly all this new stuff is working, because what's the next major project that people are going to be looking to? It's going to be Deadpool. And I think Deadpool is going to be successful. But the other issue with that film, too, is that it is rated R, so that does limit it somewhat. Obviously, it hasn't been really an issue for that film in the past. But if you take a look at the other Deadpool movies, those have both also had ceilings, right? Even if you adjust those numbers, neither of them have gotten to $1 billion. And they have also, those films specifically, cost a lot less. So this is going to be the first Disney-run Deadpool movie. I imagine they're probably going to have spent way too much on it. So even if it is successful, and I think that it probably will be successful, as far as profitability goes, it's probably not going to be as profitable as what it should be, because they're overspending. So yeah, I just, even if you are, quote, working on quality, until we actually see that quality, we're just not going to believe it. And I think that they're going to wrongly think, and many others who might defend them or look into it are going to wrongly think, that whatever happens with Deadpool is a sign of things turning around. But again, that's going to be more of this albatross, right? More of this just this random occurrence, if anything else.
Yeah. Gothix, I know that you're not a fan of Star Wars. You're not big into Lord of the Rings. Are you a Marvel girl?
I think the chat called me a normie, which I would say, and in some ways, I would agree with that. Yeah, no, I was big into the Marvel movies. I can't remember the last one that I watched, but yeah, like I'll watch them, but I haven't in a long time, just because of it's sort of like the same movies in a way. It's like lots of explosions, lots of stuff, and
Formulaic, yeah.
It's like a formula, really. But yeah, like I'll watch them. But as Tom was saying earlier, like if you're just using the same ingredients for your shitty pizza. It's just going to be a shitty pizza, just less shitty pizzas. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the ingredients for a bit, because I know that Kevin Feige, even on the publishing side of Marvel, basically there's been this push from within Marvel to get away from their core demographic, which is, dudes, and move more towards like, okay, let's make the MCU. Let's put women on the forefront. Let's bring up people of color and replace, like, the old white guys that nobody wants. Famously, like just recently, they cast Pedro Pascal as Mr. Fantastic because Kevin Feige basically said, like, this cast is too white. It's kind of reflective of what's happening in gaming, but I feel like gaming, it's easier to push back against these things because, like, there are so many like independent studio options where people can leave a AAA game that costs $200 million and go to an indie game that costs maybe like $10,000 and blow that up. A good example, that's Helldivers. So why do you think that Marvel keeps doubling down on, all this DEI stuff when audiences by and large have told Hollywood, we don't want this?
I think because they have infinite funding. Like I tell people, I don't genuinely believe like the people that are actually passionate about Marvel want to inject Marvel with the nonsense that they're doing. I think that there's somewhat of a hierarchy of funding, and I think the money is enticing. And so for a lot of people sitting up at the top, they know that this isn't what their audience wants, but they think if we pump out enough movies with this specific agenda, we're going to force them to want this thing that they don't actually want. But at the end of the day, like, they're losing money. Their fans are upset. They don't care because I would assume they're getting a bigger paycheck from somewhere else. But all the people on the lower level, those are the people that are going to suffer.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. We got some super chats that we're going to get to real quick, and then we're going to hit up one last topic before we sign out of here. But we got Gigaman Prime for $5. There's certainly distinct exceptions in the superhero movie space. I always argue that Spider-Man 2 is the best Spidey story outside of the comics. Spider-Man 2 is a really good movie. And big fan of Sam Raimi. So,
except for when Peter gets performance anxiety.
I really enjoyed Morbius. I think I'm going to go watch Morbius again.
Morbius
wait till you see
glorious for a reason.
Wait till you see Kraven the Hunter, man.
Morbius.
But you know what's funny is, everyone gives Madam Web a hard time, but that movie pretty much launched Sydney Sweeney. It was like the most successful failure ever.
I still haven't seen that.
Oh, I have. It's glorious. It's
Nice.
up there with Morbius. It really is. But kind of going along with this Marvel chat, I wanted to bring this up, which is that there's an unholy alliance that's happening right now between Disney and Warner Brothers, which is basically they're just reinventing cable. Essentially, they're bundling in Disney Plus, Hulu, ESPN Plus, Max, all this stuff. Yeah, a upcoming sports thing called Spulu, and it basically just kind of does what cable used to do, except without like the cable box and the contracts. It's just like, we're just going to bundle everything together and try to stop the bleeding by getting everyone into our services. And this article, it's so painful to watch. Vader, you had a great rant on it before we went live. You want to show Pete?
I don't know if I can do a rant again. It's just, but you scroll through that article, and it's just silly. I mean, we all unplugged for a reason, right? We got rid of our cable. I mean, I still have cable because my wife doesn't like to use streaming services, but we have cable on the lowest tier setting. It's I have Cox cable because that's what we have to get our internet through. We really don't have any other options here.
Man.
So we're like, okay, we'll get the high speed internet, the quickest one you can get, but we just get the lowest tier cable because everything else you can get on the streaming services. But now the streaming services all cost a fortune now. And that's just to get the ones with the commercials. We unplugged to be able to watch these streaming services because it was stuff that we were paying too much for on our cable packages. So we unplug that, and then we can get this other stuff for fairly decent rates on the streaming services without commercials. And now we're paying high rates in these packages with commercials. But if you want to get rid of the commercials, you pay more. And now they're going to start packaging all these other things up with, if you go down in this article, there's a whole list of things that's got like Discovery and HGTV and the Food Network and all this kind of stuff. And I go, that's a tier 2 cable package with commercials. It's the same freaking thing that we got rid of. So what am I supposed to go back to cable now? Because is cable cheaper? Is it cheaper to go back to cable and just have commercials and get internet and my TV all bundled up in one thing and forget the streams? Or do I have to? It's crazy. This is the dumbest, craziest thing. They've taken something cool, which was everybody cut the cable cord, go buy these streaming services, and now we've gone full circle already. And I don't know what to do. It's really confusing.
Yeah, in this article, they even talked about how, because Paramount is now a junk bond company, they were looking to team up with Peacock with their Paramount Plus streaming service, and it was called Peacock P Plus.
Yeah, crazy.
And apparently they couldn't come to an agreement because Paramount didn't want to give up too much control over their Showtime stuff. But Tom and Odin, like, you guys have your kind of like ear to the ground when it comes to the industry stuff. What do you think Disney teaming up with Warner Brothers to kind of like sell their streaming services to the public together means for the industry?
I think it's a sign of desperation. I think it's a sign that we've hit the end of the streaming wars. I'll be surprised if they're allowed to let this go through somehow, as far as like, other than my understanding is it's just an app that has the bundled services together. So it's basically Amazon. Like, so
Yeah.
This sounds like one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. It's like, y'all already had this thing. It was called Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
Where all your stuff went.
I'm looking at this article right now, and it says brands to be showcased in the new Disney Warner Brothers bundle include ABC, CNN, DC, Discovery, Disney, Food Network, FX, HBO, HGTV, Hulu, Marvel, Pixar, Searchlight, and Warner Brothers. That's a tier 3 cable package right there. For only $40 more a month, you can get this added on to your
how much it's going to cost.
I don't have any idea how much it's going to cost. That's
the other thing, is
like
how much is this thing going to cost? Because HBO Max is not one of the cheaper services.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
I made the $40 up. I don't have any idea what it's going to cost, but still.
According to this New York Times article, it just mentions that subscribing currently to the commercial-free versions is $48 for all of them, and with ads $25. It just says a bundle offering is likely to cost less, so it doesn't sound like they've released that yet.
So
in the meantime, I'm going to the grocery store and spending $200 for 4 days worth of groceries. It's
$50 for eggs and
It would surprise me if they cut, maybe like, instead of it being $48, it's only like $40. So it's like, okay, you're saving money,
it's
I
gonna
guess.
Be some stupid, yeah.
And some people will buy it because it's like, oh, well, it's convenient because it's all just in the same place.
Gothix, what do you think about paying for a service that shows you commercials?
I am a firm believer that we are really not entitled to anything. If we don't want to support something, we don't buy it. Like all these streaming services with them raising their money, it's an incentive for me to go read some more books. That being said, Netflix, I recently resubscribed to Netflix literally just for one show. So it's just going to be for 1 month and I'm on the lowest tier. Give me all the ads. But other than that, it's like, people are still going to subscribe. You know it. Like, people are pissed about all of these services and raising their prices. They're still going to do it. But otherwise, like in general, I think it's a great opportunity for us to find things to do that doesn't involve staring at a screen all day.
What was the show that made you subscribe?
Physical 100.
Physical 100.
Oh, that's the game show with all the buff people.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what's interesting is there's a show on Netflix. It's a reality show called Unlocked, where it's basically they did this experiment at a prison where they just like stopped the lockdowns, and so like inmates can basically just like roam freely.
Kumbaya.
And I'm like, you know what, that looks really interesting. I kind of want to see that show. And it's funny because Netflix, out of all the streaming services lately, has had like the best stuff on it. So like it makes it worthwhile. Like they just had that roast of Tom Brady on there, doing a lot of stuff with comedy. So I feel like you know, like they should just go back to the old model where studios would just license stuff to Netflix. So we just have to do like this one streaming service. But that's just me. I know Netflix is experimenting with like, you know, ad tiers and stuff like that.
And plus, you also have all these free, like you have Freevee and Tubi, and these have ads on them anyway, and they have so many movies on them. I don't see a reason to really subscribe to anything. Like, I don't really need to see something the moment that it comes out.
Pluto TV is great for like all the Star Trek and Stargate stuff. Yeah. Free.
Our good friend Len Kabaczynski's movies are all up on Tubi. So if you want to watch his films, they're up there. Although if you want to watch the film he directed starring Matt Vader, you have to go onto the Salty Nerd channel.
That is not true.
It's called Warrior Episode 0.
Let's start Alex. I'm just the
Alex
villain.
And Vader. Yeah. No, they had an epic fight scene in that movie. Yeah. Slap fights. It was great. Brilliant. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in today. We had a lot to talk about, and we talked about it. So time to throw it to the panel Odin of Easter. Any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
Yes, you can find me over at OMB Reviews on YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, Twitter, etc. Should be fun getting into the summer very soon to start doing hopefully more videos, hopefully be able to add more content. And as far as any final thoughts are concerned, I really have a lot of high, like the high of the stream is I think that there's a lot of potential. I don't know if it's going to be realized, but a lot of potential with this upcoming Lord of the Rings project. And as far as the low, Marvel and Star Wars are still just garbage. Star Wars, I think, is much worse off at this point, but I'll be very fascinated to see what Deadpool does. Can't wait to see what those opening numbers are.
It will be interesting. It'll also be interesting to see how Marvel spins it as like, oh, this was totally our doing, and we are back on the right track.
Baby. Yeah,
exactly. All right,
we're
Gothix.
the underdogs.
Gothix, any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you? Like, what's your Twitch channel? What's your YouTube channel? All that stuff.
Yeah, so you can. As for final thoughts, go outside, touch some grass, and just be prepared for more DEI. It's not going to go away. They're just going to rebrand it. Don't get so upset. Be very open-handed with your nostalgia, because it's going to get trampled on. But yeah, you can find me on YouTube and on Twitch. I was streaming a little bit of Overwatch today. You can watch my documentary on lore.tv, and it should be on Amazon Prime hopefully soon, whenever they approve the film. It was great chatting with you guys. I had fun.
Yeah, guys. So links to all the panels' YouTube channels are in the description. But I really want to encourage you guys to go to Lore TV and check out Gothix's documentary. It's actually like a pretty hardcore. It looks like a professional Hollywood documentary, essentially. Like you got like a professional team to do this thing.
Nice.
But it's definitely worth checking out. So guys, be sure to go check it out. There's a pinned link in the chat for you guys to go check that out. And support Gothix. She's great, good people. Tom from Midnight's Edge, any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you, my friend?
Well, my final thoughts, as always.
I like turtles.
And you can find me on Midnight's Edge After Dark, Mead Radio. I have a new channel called Lost Classics, where you can find me posting all my funny videos after they've run their course on Mead. So yeah, and Mead stands for Midnight's Edge After Dark. It is a separate channel, so do check it out. It's being heavily suppressed. Thanks for having me, as always.
Yeah, thanks for being here. You are on the thumbnail, so you are contractually required to show up.
Good, because I look like a thumbnail.
You do look like a thumbnail.
Me too.
And Brian from the Popcast, he couldn't be here today because his wife pulled eminent domain over our live stream.
Dude, he's swimming in chilaquiles and margaritas right now, so he's okay. He's okay.
Well, hopefully there's not another obscure Mexican holiday next Saturday, so that he will actually be here. She couldn't wait one day. She couldn't wait one day for the actual Mother's Day.
Well, no, there's tomorrow too. She's gonna get. She's
doubling down.
Double dipping. Okay. Absolutely.
That's smart. That's smart.
Yeah.
All right, Matt Vader, what do we got going on the main Salty Nerd channel?
Dude, we're kind of going in a little bit raw here lately. We're not really planning stuff. It's really weird because you usually have a sit down and we have like months of stuff planned out ahead. And now I ask you, hey, what are we doing? And you're like, I don't know. I guess we're just gonna go crazy and talk about whatever. But so that'll be on Tuesday, the whatever Salty Nerd Raw stream, I guess. I know one thing for sure we're talking about is Planet of the Apes. Alex and I are going to go watch that in the next couple days, and I don't know if Kadish is going. Jude is not. Jude refuses to watch monkey movies, and that's okay.
I saw it.
It's okay. It's all good. So yeah, Planet of the Apes, and I'm going to be playing a lot of Helldivers for stuff over on our quickly growing Salty Nerd Gaming channel. It's kind of nuts how fast those videos are blowing up over there for our tiny little 500 sub channel. And I would encourage everybody, if you're a fan of video games, to go over to Salty Nerd Gaming and hit that sub button for us. We're doing almost daily now live streams. They're later at night when I get off work, and Alex is putting together a lot of videos for the channel over there. It's a lot of fun. It's a new thing for us, and I'm loving it. So that's what I got.
That's fantastic. It's not that we don't plan ahead. It's that I plan ahead and you guys say we don't want to talk about those things.
I only did that once. I only did that one thing last week.
No,
but
no, you do it constantly.
No,
you do it constantly for this show too.
No, no, not really. But okay. whatever. It's fine.
Believe me, people. Anyway, I want to give a big shout out to everyone who donated to us throughout the stream. We got Mr. Anderson, Scotty Dub, Death Angel Shadow, Magna Defender, Bohemian Paul, Doomed Huh, Fluffy Panda, and Gigaman Prime. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
and a
guys.
big shout out to Scotty Dub for that hundo super chat. You are still our top contributor. I tell you, Vader, William Forbes better start stepping up on Saturdays. Otherwise, he's going to get. He's
not obligated to do anything. He can do whatever he wants. So
this is very true. All right, everyone. Thank you all so much for showing up today, and thank you if you gifted memberships in the chat. I know that people in the chat appreciate that, and they are going to want to check out our members only playlist on the channel. Because that's where all the members content is. And we also do member stream twice a month. Our next member stream is going to be next Tuesday, for our salty, extra salty and above members. Those tend to be Q&As, and we have topics that we talk about. So be sure to tune in for that if you got one of those gifted memberships. And also, guys, stay tuned because we're going right over to Mephisto's movie reviews after we're done here. Mephisto has a really fun show. Me and Tom have been on it in the past, and we'd like for you to check it out. Anyway, special thanks to Gothix for joining us. Thank you so much for being here today. And as always, until next time, my friends, stay salty.
Hey, folks, thanks so much for watching this live stream. If you want to watch our previous live stream, make sure to click right here. Or if you would like to check out one of our favorite highlights, click right here.